In this video, we're going to have a look at solving linear equations where that equation involves a fraction. So by the end of the video, we're going to be able to solve a linear equation that involves a fraction. So to solve a equation that contains a fraction, you want to multiply both sides of the equation by the lowest common denominator. Once you've got all of the fractions, all of the terms in that equation having the same common denominator, you can remove the fraction, so remove the denominator, and then you're left with the numerator only. So let's have a look at an example. So in the first example, I've got x over 4 subtract x over 5 is equal to 3 over 4. So the first step is to find a common denominator. Now, the common denominator we want is going to be the lowest common denominator, and my denominators at the moment are 4 and 5. My lowest common denominator of 4 and 5 is going to be 20. So I want to turn all of my denominators into 20. So to do that, my first fraction of x over 4, I'm going to multiply both my numerator and my denominator by 5. For my second fraction of x over 5, I'm going to multiply both of my terms by 4. And then for my third fraction, because I need all of my fractions to have the same denominator, I'm going to multiply 3/4 by 5. So my new equation I have with my common denominator, it is going to be 5x over 20 subtract 4x over 20 is equal to 15 over 20. So now that I've got an equation and all of my fractions in that equation have a common denominator, I can go ahead and remove my denominator. So that leaves me with 5x subtract 4x is equal to 15. So 5x minus 4x is equal to x. So x is equal to 15. So that's an example of how we can solve a linear equation that involves fractions by first finding a common denominator, converting all of my terms to that common denominator, removing the denominators, leaving with my numerators, and going ahead and solving as I would for a normal linear equation. So looking at a second example, I've got x over 4 subtract 4x over 7 is equal to 2. Now before I go ahead and find my common denominator, I've got terms in my original equation that was with fractions and without fractions. So I want to convert all of my terms to be with fractions. So to do that, I change my 2 into the fraction of 2 over 1, which has the same value, but now is in a fraction form. So I've got a denominator of 4, a denominator of 7, and a denominator of 1. And I want to find the lowest common denominator between those three, which is going to be 28. So my first fraction, I'm going to multiply by 7. My second fraction, I'm going to multiply by 4. And my third fraction, my 2 over 1, I'm going to multiply by 28. So my new equation is going to be 7x over 28 subtract 16x over 28 is equal to 56 over 28. So now that I've got my common denominator across all terms in my equation, I can go ahead and remove the common denominator. So that leaves me with 7x subtract 16x is equal to 56. So that gives me a normal linear equation I can go ahead and solve. So negative 9x is equal to 56. The opposite of multiplying by negative 9 is to divide by negative 9. And I want to do that to both sides. So x is going to equal to negative 6.2. So let's have a look at a third example of solving a linear equation involving fractions. So here I've got 3a subtract 2 over 2 is equal to a plus 11 over 3. So my first step is going to be to find that common denominator. And my lowest common denominator for 2 and 3 is going to equal to 6. So for my left-hand side, I want to multiply by 3. And for the right-hand side, I want to multiply by 2. So applying that multiplication, I'm going to have 3 and 3a minus 2 over 6 is equal to 2a plus 11 over 6. Applying distribution law to those fractions. So 3 times 3a minus 3 times 2 over 6 is equal to 2 times a plus 2 times 11 over 6, which is equal to 9a subtract 6 over 6 is equal to 2a plus 22 over 6. So now I've got an equation that has fractions with the same denominator. I can remove my denominator and I'm left with 9a minus 6 is equal to 2a plus 22. Now I can go ahead and solve this equation by doing the same steps as I would for a two-sided equation. The first thing I need to do is to gather up all my a's onto one side. And looking at it, I've got a 9a and a 2a. So I'm going to shift my 2a from the right-hand side to the left-hand side. At the moment, it's a positive 2a. The opposite of a positive 2a is a negative 2a. So I'm going to subtract 2a from both sides. So that leaves me with 7a subtract 6 is equal to 22. So now that I've got all my a's onto one side, I go ahead and continue to apply my reverse bitmass order. So I'm going to look at is subtract 6. The opposite of subtracting 6 is to add 6. So add 6 onto both sides. So 7a is going to equal 22 plus 6, so 28. So now I've got 7a is equal to 28. I look at my 7. At the moment, I'm multiplying by 7. The opposite of multiplying by 7 is dividing by 7. So divide by 7 on both sides. So a is going to equal to 28 divided by 7, which is equal to 4. So for this example, my a value is equal to 4. So that's some examples of how do we multiply or how do we solve linear equations when they involve a fraction. Remember, we can always go back and check our answer by substituting our value into the original equation.